Hey there, this is my project assignment, and I'll be talking a little bit about The Witcher. Some basic information is it's written by Andrew Sapkowski, and it's a novel about a fictional world where it takes place in Slavic and Polish mythology. I was originally planning to just review the first book, The Last Wish, but I like to summarize more about the franchise in general and some of the characters. But a little things I want to add about it is that Slavish and Polish mythology is not really mainstream media, I would say. I think most people would think of Norse or Germanic mythology, and it's really neat if you get new stuff from a from a new. It's just more richer. Just you just get more something new. But if you look at my picture, you'll see my own collection of the Witcher franchise, and I have read most of them. The one I haven't read yet is The Lady of the Storm, and I'm aware the book Season of the Storm is out, and I haven't bought it yet. It's still coming. But my first introduction about the Witcher franchise was about the game Witcher 3, what I consider one of the best games of all time. Like, it's definitely in my top 3 list. So, what do I want to mostly talk about is the Geralt of Rivia. He's the main character, main protagonist to the whole story. So if you know anything about him, he's no hero. If you're not familiar with him, the best way to describe him is that he is a monster hunter, mercenary, sellsword, and an abomination to the human race in general. It sounds bad enough that he is being rejected by society. However, those same people who sneer at him and spit on him when he arrives, they also need his service the most. You see, The Witcher is very simple. They have an obligation to help and service the human race. The world they live in is filled with mythical creatures and monsters who plague the world. Their duty is to make their service available for the right price to rid of the world of those monsters. So what makes Geralt interesting is he's not all the way human, but he's also not all the way monster. It's in his nature to remain neutral and use his judgment to do the best for his customers. And he does it so like the most efficient way. You see, as a freak of nature, Geralt has his foot in both worlds, one in the monster side and one of the human world. He has the power to communicate and roam freely in the cities of man. He might be despised, but he can always get work. On the other side, he doesn't enjoy a great reputation with the monsters either. But they know that they can reason with Geralt. He is a witcher, and this is better than dealing with humans, who immediately sound the alarm and call to arms if a creature appears in their presence. I find Geralt to be such a compelling and relatable character because his life is filled with struggle. He's so much he's so much of an outcast of society. The only human contact he gets are those who reject him and who are rejected. The most characters he hangs around are witches and sorcerers who are feared among the human populace. His friend is a dwarf who are mistreated by humans. He's associated with the other mercenaries and sellsword if they have the same goal as he does. But when it comes down to business and the heavy lifting, like fighting a griffin or a creature, he pretty much goes solo. So what makes it so, a little bit tragic is because he's a loner and he only associates people through his work. And being a witcher means slay the monsters, get paid, and disappear. And the most efficient way to treat it that way is just be neutral. You don't have a bias, you don't lean towards one side or the other, and he might not get appreciated most of the time, but he still, he it's good to rather have a reputation as like you do a good job in what you do than just being known as a crazy murderer. So most of the time when he's trying to reason with succubus, he stands alone. However, what makes him different is that he can be sympathetic to others and even attempt to reason with them. Geralt's goal is not always to slay the monster, but simply wants them to avoid hurting other people. So he goes the extra mile to get the best outcome for both humans and monsters. And that is like a unique situation because not all monsters are just violent creatures, they can communicate, they can talk, but because of their appearance of what they are, most people would just overreact and scream, run, or try to kill them. So Geralt is a freak of nature. He's both monster and human. So sometimes, like when you can reason with someone, and make them go away. It's better than trying to kill someone because it's a risk versus reward. Is the risk worth the reward? Can I actually kill the monster? Will I survive it? It comes down to the money and if you get out of there alive. That's where things get really tricky. As much Geralt can reason with monsters, it's easy for him to slay monsters. Out of it's out of when you have monsters who are just out of control creatures, the situation is simple. There are no real consequence or remorse in taking these monsters down. At what point in his life, a witch told him, "What was your sword about?" I heard witches carry two, a silver blade for monsters and a steel for humans. In which Geralt replied, "Both are for monsters, unfortunately." So Geralt very often ends up fighting other humans and has no choice than to slay them. People's choice and motives are hard to predict, but the problem is that when a person is killed, it tends to follow you around from one place to another, compared to just killing some monsters. No one would care, like, if you kill a monster. If the world's ruled by humans and I mean, there's just like animals. Like, when we kill them, we eat them, we use their bodies for whatever, oils, carpeting, clothing. Like, killing monsters has no real consequences. But if Geralt would just randomly slay people, he would just be known as a murderer and a killer, and like you would have a pretty rough life. So I personally believe that Geralt is stuck in both worlds, and he doesn't draw the real benefit from it. He struggles with his existence, and at the same time accepts it the way things are. He is a monster killer for for sure. I mean, he can live past 100, and no witcher is ever known to die in his bed. He has the luck of living in adventure and see and do things no one else ever will. His unique perspective makes him such an exciting character. He is never portrayed as a flat-out hero who conducts himself in chivalrous act. So what makes this interesting is that Geralt can live for a long time, and that's why when you want to write stories, it's always easy to say, well, we'll make him relatable, make him the way we understand him, and that might get a little bit boring. Why? Because people like to talk about misery and suffering, and the worst way to describe Geralt is he's just stuck in both worlds. Really, he just like it's like the dwarves in the Witcher story. They're just treated as a minority and really mistreated, but they're still accepted because they have skills like blacksmithing, banking, little things where they can rely on them. You could almost relate it to like in the Middle Ages where Jews would live in their ghetto, and but what makes the Jews unique is because they could loan money. Because back in Christianity, you couldn't loan money from Christians. It was just like morally wrong. It's just against their religion. But the Jews not a Christian, so you could go to them and loan money. And many kings in history are known to pawn their crown just to make to pay their bills. So drawers have their benefits in society, and they're more accepted than Geralt because Geralt is just. I mean, there aren't too many Witchers, and Witchers have a really difficult job because they just. I mean, killing monsters. It's not like not everybody can do it, and so in the end, he will grow old, and some from his past will hunt him down, slay him, and so his story ends. Maybe he gets lucky and settles down. The first time would never be a bad story, but most of the books I read have to do with struggle and an unending act of violence. The world he lives in is grim and dark. Every story needs an end, and sometimes we don't need to sugarcoat it with a happy ending. And what I like about Geralt is as much as struggles, there's no real positive outcome. It's the way would you accept them in your community? Would you accept them as part of family? I mean, they're definitely, I would say, smarter than the average person in his world, but like, I don't want to go all out like make a racist argument, but if people are different, people will notice it. I mean, just the looks of it, the skin color, whatever. I mean, people like to judge like right away. Like you judge a book by its cover, and that's a terrible way to describe people. And that's what I like about Geralt because he has so much character and so he's so in depth. I mean, the guy just really struggles, but because he's a Witcher, he has an iron discipline. He's like, it's a job, it's my duty. That's what I was trained for. That's what I was made for, pretty much, and so it's I guess he has purpose, but at the same time he will never be accepted. He will never find the happy ending we would see in movies and stories. Like he's just a guy who has to go through life and keep going till he pretty much dies. Like like the quote says, "A Witcher is never known to die in his bed," and we could easily predict that. But that's all I want to talk about my Witcher review. I think the most important thing is Geralt who drives the story. He's not a hero, not a good guy. He does good things, but I mean, ultimately, he makes choices. And one thing what Geralt says is, if I could choose, I would choose neither. All the saying goes more like, I would pick the lesser evil. That's what he says because in his choices, it's usually the one evil or the other, and let me just take care of the lesser evil. But that's all. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.